ridiculous.
Well, here's the thing.
Maybe. Sometimes.
Tell me about this. I want to know more.
Oh, yeah. No.
Holy cow.
We've had a lot of fun.
So, Catherine, how is your summer vacation house guest doing? Settling in nicely?
Our little hedgehog, Rory, is fine. He really does not move for any amount of time during daylight hours. He is definitely nocturnal. So during the day, we just see him curled up in a ball in his little cave that he has inside his cage. And
wouldn't we all just like to spend the day like this? Let's be honest.
I know. And it also, the cave sits on top of the heating pad that's built into his cage.
Wow.
Because hedgehogs need warmth. They, I believe they are originally from Africa. And they need a warm climate. So his cage actually plugs in, and there's a little spot that's kept extra warm in there. So he likes to just snuggle up in there with his wood shavings and his little cave, and that's what he does all day. And I just, wander past and make sure he's breathing. And then at night, we decided to start feeding him, at like 5 or 6 p.m. because he definitely does, because we had started out doing it in the morning, but he doesn't eat it until like 9 or 10 or 11 p.m. So we now feed him in the evenings. And once in a while you will catch him coming out and nibbling on his little kibble.
Aw, hedgehog kibble, huh?
Oh, well, it's dry cat food.
Oh.
So
They're not picky.
Wow.
No. I mean, apparently we could give him like worms and things.
Oh.
But I'm good with the
No,
cat.
thank you. So are you manning the hedgehog's Instagram account?
Well, the hedgehog does have an account set up for him in the fall and then sort of abandoned, and my son was unable to access that. So I tag him when of him, which you can see on my Instagram.
Nice.
So. But, so far it's like, you can have a picture of him in a ball in your hand, or you could have a picture of him maybe sticking his face out. But all the pictures are kind of. My sister-in-law sent me an Instagram account called Mr. Pokey. That is incredibly cute. I believe it's Mr.Pokee, and it's this very smiley, cheerful hedgehog. And as I told her, so far ours is Mr. Grumpy. He's not really appreciating being taken out and touched.
Not an outgoing hedgehog.
No, I mean, he may still be adjusting to his changed circumstances. But
well, yeah.
Yeah.
We'll see.
That's got to be a little traumatic.
Yes.
Aw.
And what about, is it, like, I think we were talking about this last week, he's quite prickly, right? Like, you wear the gloves?
We wear the gloves, and also he doesn't really like, he like flinches if you try to touch him.
Ew.
Really?
So, yes. So we try to not do that. And,
Wow.
because, if you're holding him and he flinches, then I'm afraid he'll get dropped. We don't want that.
No.
It's he gets a little bit, when you pick him up, he either squirms or he just makes himself into a ball. So.
Aw. So he's pretty low key.
Yeah, so far. So, I mean, we still have the pressure of just keeping him alive, but so far, so
And
good.
he hasn't escaped,
Yikes.
right?
He has not escaped, no.
Oh.
Yeah, the dogs are like not really bothering. Like, they, once in a while, one of them will kind of stand back and try to get closer to where the cage is. He'll try to put his paws up on the cabinet that's underneath that counter. But other than, I just tell him to get down, and he does, and then that's it. So
Wow.
as long as the dogs don't actually pull out the cord like that, where it's plugged in, that would be my fear. But I have it kind of I have pushed it back against the wall so that they can't do that. So, because I could just see, like a sitcom situation where the dog yanks the cord and the whole cage falls over and there's pencil shavings or there's cedar chips and a rogue hedgehog on the kitchen floor. If it didn't get crushed by the cage falling on top of it. So that's my nightmare scenario.
Yeah.
Speaking of rogue pets, as you know, my son moved back home a couple weeks ago and brought his pets along with him because my son and pets are just synonymous. And he brought home his fish tank. The cats are still yet to come, and he was filling it up on Sunday and with all his fish. And my husband says, "Are you filling that water a little too high?" And the fish could jump or something. and my son's like, no, I've had it for 2 years. It's always been like this, no problem. So we're like, okay, whatever, right? Not a word of a lie. The next morning, we had a jumper. It came out.
Oh,
that happened one time. We had a fish that jumped.
Is this like fish suicide, or do they think they're gonna find a way out?
What it was, but we didn't. Obviously, it happened in the middle of the night because we got to it in the morning. It was just there on the floor, and mind you, this happened with his turtle because he had a turtle that he swore would never get out, and of course,
dear,
it, on the other side of the house, and then his hamster, which escaped 3 times. So,
well, now this is starting to seem like it's something about him. What is it about him that his pets are so eager for freedom that they will risk their lives?
They know something's going on in the house. They got to get out. Some bad juju going on in here.
Oh my!
So I wish your hedgehog the best.
Yeah, I wish it does not come out either. Yeah, we had that happen with the fish one time too. So
you did, yeah.
Yeah, we found it on the table, nose first, sticking straight up, dried out.
Oh, how awful.
And it was living in my daughter's room, and she was a little kid, so it's a good thing that an adult found it.
Did you have to run out and buy another fish?
Yeah, I think we did.
And then put some metal across the top?
Wow. Yeah, well, it was overfilled. It was the same situation.
Wow. Such dramatic lives we lead.
Definitely.
And we bring you these thrilling tales on our podcast, which, by the way, hello and welcome to Parenting Roundabout, a weekly podcast about the things that parents are talking about, obsessing about, complaining about, and cleaning up after right now. I'm Terri Morrow, and with me today are Catherine Haleko.
Hello.
And Nicole Erdix.
Hello.
Today on the podcast, we're going to talk about theme songs on our speed round, shout out some stuff we like on the Roundabout Roundup, and do some shameless self-promotion. But first, are you a carpenter or a gardener? Nicole, please explain.
Well, my friend sent me this article the other day, and it was an article written by Alison Gopnik. Mm-hmm. Forgive me if I pronounce that wrong. And she asked the question, what kind of parent are you? Are you a carpenter or are you a gardener? So a carpenter would be a parent that thinks, you can build the child, you can mold the child, you can create the child into what you envision, your child to be. Whereas a gardener would cultivate the space around the child, let the child grow, let the child branch out. There'd be no trimming. Just
a little mulch, a little weed killer. It'll be fine.
There'll be no power tools.
Exactly. It's just kind of, and it could, take over your life if you wanted to. And so I thought it was kind of interesting because those are 2 terms I hadn't really heard of to describe parenting. I mean, you hear of the helicopter parent, and but I hadn't heard of carpenter and gardener. So I thought that would be something that we could explore today in our podcast, and maybe reflect on what kind of parents we are or lean towards if we are, we're a little biased towards one way or another. And also too, the author points out that parents who are a little bit too focused on what their kids are, and I'm assuming she's talking about the Carpenter.
Yes, she is.
Could harm their children, and that they may be anxious, tense, or unhappy.
And here's where Terri starts humping.
Here's where I start humping. Here's where
Terri,
she loses me. Well, in the first place, if I was a gardener parent, given my gardening skills, my kids would be in big trouble. But I like, it's interesting you propose this. Are you a carpenter or a gardener? What I would like to read is, here are some pros and cons of each approach. Instead, it's, gardener is the way to be. If you're a carpenter, you're a bad parent. And, please reference the 300 other episodes in which I've said, parents aren't all the same, kids aren't all the same. There's never one approach. There's many different approaches. I mean, some kids need a carpenter. There may be some significant work to be done. And you can't just plant them outside and let them grow and go have coffee with your friends. So I wished it hadn't been so one-sided. I wished it had been, here's two interesting ways. Here are some things that are good about them. Here are some things that are bad about them. If you have this particular child, this particular style might be better. Instead of just yet another snooty reiteration of some people are parenting wrong. Here's why. So, humph.
Do you have a bias though towards,
I suppose it sounds like I must have a bias towards Carpenters, doesn't it? Because I'm ticked that she's dismissing. There's gradations of everything too. I mean, there's the parent who says my kid is going to be this thing and I'm just going to keep hammering away until it happens. Mm-hmm. But sometimes, I can see both sides of things. I think sometimes, I can't say it anything different than every kid is different, every parent is different, every situation is different. You can't just say only one way is right.
Right.
I guess in my particular parenting situation, I don't feel that I have had kids I could just let, grow. As much as I've tried, but they needed specific things. They needed therapies. They needed specific educational things. I had people telling me I should be hammering a lot harder, and I backed off a little bit. I just want to be like an IKEA kind of carpenter that's just going to snap stuff in together. I don't want to have the buzz saws and all of that. I just want to take the incredibly difficult instructions and sort of put stuff together and hope that if I brace it in the corner and it's still wobbly a little bit, but it'll stay up and I can put books on it. This is the kind of carpenter parent I am.
But I think you could read that article as that's being a gardener, like that's setting up what the kid needs is part of gardening, right?
Yes, but I felt that it was much more laissez-faire than I've been able to be, and it's. I guess I just really, if I have a tendency towards anything, it's a tendency to reject black and white thinking. So anything that sets up something as wrong and something is right, I'm going to be going, but
Mm-hmm.
So I just bristle at that. I hope that in my own writing, I think I've sometimes been bossy like that because it's irresistible to be bossy, who doesn't want that job? But at the same time in my life, I know that it's not that easy and that the people who are the people who are the most certain that their way is right are the most wrong. So, in my experience. I don't know, you guys dig this idea? You're out there puttering in the garden with your kid, you're just like putting up a few stakes and letting it go. Putting down some good fertilizer. Oh, certainly I put down plenty of good fertilizer, my kids, to be sure. But
well, I think that I agree with the, let's say, concern that the author has for things that your child can be molded, right? I mean, that, if you do X, then your child will turn out as Y, is something we've always resisted. And I think, I agree, does not work. So.
But there's all different ways to mold. Certainly like installing a value system in your child is molding to some degree. If you want to give your child religious beliefs, you're molding them to some degree. Maybe it's not really carpeting. Maybe it's setting up a thing in your yard for the ivy to grow on in one place.
Trellis.
A trellis. Maybe it's just making a trellis. We're just carpentering a trellis, and then we're letting the ivy go.
You have to be a carpenter to make a trellis, and a gardener to get something to grow on it.
It's compromise is what I'm saying. A little bit of each.
Yeah. That is true.
You're just not going to let them grow over the fence and into the neighbor's yard.
No.
A lot of weed, let the weed trees grow, which is what our personal landscaping is. But
right. Well, yeah, I don't know. I have to admit I think I tend to start out a little bit more carpenterish. And then, have realized along the way, or I did start out that way. I know I did, but have realized that doesn't always work out in my favor or my child's favor. So, yeah.
Yeah. You're like the carpenter that starts out making one thing and it turns out to be another thing.
Yeah.
Because you forgot something or...
Yeah.
I have often thought measure twice, cut once in my parenting experience.
Right.
There you go.
But I've never leaned towards that whole, well, maybe some people think I do. I don't know. Maybe in this community, I'm probably a little bit more permissive than most parents, but I don't really like the idea of like free range kids.
Yeah.
I kind of want to know where my kids are and what they're doing and they're hanging out with. And so if I had to lean towards any tendency, it would be the carpenter, I fully admit.
Yeah.
So I'll be there building the trellis.
I'm in the workshop there with you, Nicole, hitting my thumb with a hammer. And
I'll just swoop in and buy the trellis.
There you go.
And
right.
Will you come garden in my garden? Because gardening is not my thing.
I have been trying to weed my flower beds in my front walk for days and days, and my neighbor just like, are you gonna pull all those weeds? Why don't you get some weed be gone? And I don't want to spray, like I don't know.
You don't want to kill the weeds. You just want them to go away.
Well, I don't want them to grow back either, but I don't. I also don't want like piles of dead ones. I think that looks pretty bad. So
yeah,
my idea is to pull them all, then spray the weed stuff, then put down wood chips. So my idea is smothering, which we can also relate to parenting at any time.
Absolutely,
that is true.
And certainly we've all felt that there were weeds in our kids' lives, so you can't use weed begone on them. You have to,
like
build a trellis to guide them out of the house and back to their own home.
We are really working the metaphors here a little bit too hard, I think.
Parenting is a garden.
Once you get going, it's hard to stop.
Yeah. No, I don't know. I can't. I mean, I know a lot of parents. Where I came from in Canada, in my community, it was very, very, like, how should I say this nicely? Granola. So there was a lot of kind of this free range parenting, children kind of thing going on. And I just couldn't ever really totally jive with that either. So being around parents when my kids were younger, I think being around parents like that had an effect too on how I raised my kids. Because, heaven forbid my child turns out like that. So it kind of influenced the way the people around me, my environment certainly influenced how I parented as well. So, yeah, I don't know.
Yet another parenting theory that we are ambivalent about.
Yes.
It's bring them on. You got a parenting theory? Send it to us.
Bring them up, set them up, and knock them down.
That's right. We will
our plan.
dither about them easily.
Yeah. So.
Anybody think of a song title that has that replies to that we can use as a transition?
That is so funny because this is going to be our speed round.
Yes.
Which is, what would the theme song of your life be? And I thought I had one, but then I remembered I did think of a gardening related one that I do like. But hold on, because I have to quickly.
We can use that as like.
If it's Hamilton related, I am not going to get it.
It's not Hamilton. No, it's Crunchy Granola.
Oh, okay.
But where?
Here comes the sun.
There's actually a Crunchy Granola Suite. Who did the Crunchy Granola Suite? Is it John Denver?
I don't know. Where.
It's not my theme song. All right. I think I sang a choir somewhere on the way.
Oh, here it is. Well, John Denver, the first YouTube that came up was the first person. It is a John Denver song.
What is it?
And it's called The Garden Song.
Okay. And it's been after my time.
It's the one that starts inch by inch.
Oh, yeah.
By row.
Oh, I know.
And I like that song. And it's all about, you do your work in the garden, but you also need help.
You need a good carpenter.
From Mother Nature also, in order to get things done. So it's kind of like, I like it as a theme song because it's like, you work hard, but you also need contributions from the universe
right.
to get things done. So that is my theme song.
Okay.
And do you have a theme song, Terry?
Yeah, well, I mean, there are so many songs, depending on my particular mood at the time, of course. But something that jumped into my mind, I have been a big Jimmy Buffett fan over the years, and he has a song, Changes in Latitudes, Changes in Attitudes, that, yeah, I could take that as a theme song. There's some lines that go, yesterdays are over my shoulder, so I can't look back for too long. There's just too much to see waiting in front of me, and I know that I just can't go wrong. And there's also a line that says, if we couldn't laugh, we just would go insane, which I've certainly felt any number of times. So I will claim that as my theme song. I think it's pretty workable and pretty healthy. So how about you, Nicole? What's your theme song?
Well, I had a hard time trying to figure out what it was because I feel like I have a lot of theme songs because I've just, my life has been such a mosaic of events. And so I took this Buzzfeed quiz, and it's so funny because the song that I had in mind was actually the song that it came up with.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
It's funny. And I mean, it's such an 80s song, Journey, Don't Stop Believing, right? Like, keep on going.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter where you move, where you live, what job you have, just keep moving forward. Doesn't matter what situation you're in. So it was that one or Stronger by Kelly Clarkson. So,
oh, okay. Those are both good.
What doesn't kill you makes you stronger. So, I mean, my life
certainly been there.
Been a little bit of a roller coaster.
Yeah.
So,
cool.
Kept on, plugging through every day. So I think I would take those two. And
those sound like good choices.
So those would be the theme songs to my life. And if our audience doesn't know what their theme song is, you can definitely go and do this BuzzFeed quiz because it was kind of fun.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, we'll have to give a link out to that. I'd like to take that and see what they say.
We'll do that right now.
Well, remember that you can hear a new speed round every Wednesday through Friday.
Hi, we hope you're enjoying this episode of Parenting Roundabout. We're not one of those podcasts that's trying to sell you websites or mattresses or meal kits. I mean, we totally would, but no one's asked us yet.
There is, however, something you can do that costs you nothing, but will put a little change in our pockets. Listen to our podcast on the Radio Public app. Download the app to your iPhone or Android device and listen to Parenting Roundabout there, and we'll get paid for each listen. Plus a little more if you listen a lot.
We think you'll enjoy listening to all your podcasts on this app, but if you could at least listen to Parenting Roundabout there, we'd be very grateful. Now, back to the episode. And now we're going to move on to our Roundabout Roundup, where we bring you some of the things we've read or seen or used recently that we want to shout out and share with you. Nicole, do you have one for this week?
Yeah, I do. I would definitely have to shout out my new Bluetooth earbuds that I bought.
Fancy.
On Amazon.
Okay.
And I don't even, the product name is just like GRDE. So it's not even a product that I recognize, but they're really nice.
Nice.
And yeah, they're very easy to set up, and you don't have all the wires connected to your phone. So you could just have your phone in your pocket or your purse or whatever.
That's nice.
And be, chilling away, listen to your tunes, and can take calls with it, of course. And yeah, and it was a good price. Can't remember. I think it was like $20 or something, just over $20. So yeah, so it's a nice alternative to having those earphone cords and wires and everything all over the place. I was reading this little kind of, I don't know what it was, a little anecdote about the earphones to the old style earphones to the iPhones, because now, of course, they're all Bluetooth.
Yeah.
You've got a newer phone, right?
Right.
Yeah. So, but the older ones that I'm talking about, that you had to plug into your phone, and the lady was saying, you used to get on, you'd get on the plane and you'd start to untangle your earphone cords, and then, of course, by the time the plane lands, you finally have them untangled and ready to listen. So they were such a nightmare to sort out. And with this, that doesn't happen. So
nice.
I'm excited about those.
I've on and off tried Bluetooth speakers and headphones, and I always at some point can't get them to work right, or the battery is a problem. But those sound good.
Yeah, I will
think about trying that again.
I'll try.
Yeah. My Roundabout Roundup item for this week is something that may be interesting to you, actually, too, Nicole. There's a podcast called 99% Invisible, and on their website, it says it's about all the thought that goes into the things we don't think about, the unnoticed architecture and design that shape our world. This particular episode was about curb cuts. And the wheelchair user who sort of agitated for them back in the 70s. Yeah. And this remarkable man who became disabled due to polio. He was paralyzed from the neck down. He had to be in an iron lung quite a lot of the time. And he developed ways to be out of it during the day. And he wound up going to Berkeley and getting a PhD, and was sort of pioneered the kind of accessibility accommodations that needed to be made. And they were talking about, there was this kind of militant group of wheelchair users who were going out at night with their helpers and like breaking curbs so that they had to be remade with the curb cut in them. And so there's some very interesting stuff about the early days of the disability rights movement, and had lots of interesting things. Some I had heard before and some I hadn't, but very, very worth a listen, especially if you're interested in disability rights. And it was interesting that they talked about something called the curb cut effect, which is that accommodations made for people with disabilities turn out to be fantastically useful for everybody. Yeah. So people now think, well, gee, the curb cut can help the person pushing a stroller go up the curb, and they can help somebody on a bicycle. That's not what they were made for, but it turns out when you do these things, they're handy for everybody. We all like having closed captions on TV so we can watch in a noisy room, or we can follow some complicated dialogue. So, that ties in so much to inclusion, and saying that, you do this thing, you think you're doing this thing for somebody else, but it turns out to be good for everybody.
Well, that's that whole concept of universal design for learning.
Yes, they did talk, and they talked about universal design in home design and in buildings and things like that. So you would, I think, enjoy listening to it, but I think our listeners would too. That podcast in general, I've really enjoyed listening to, but this one in particular kind of made me sit up and listen. Okay. Catherine, do you have something for the roundup this week?
Yeah. I suspect that I stole this out from under Terry's nose.
Well, fortunately, I had a different podcast episode to talk about, so go for it.
So The Good Place, which is a show that we have been we watched the first 2 seasons of and talked about on round 2, and we are anxiously awaiting season 3 in the fall. And to keep us busy in the meantime, the show has started its own podcast that's just called I think it's just called The Good Place Podcast. I don't know, right? It doesn't seem to have
Yeah, I think it's just called
title.
The Good Place. Yeah.
So I've only heard one so far, and it was an interview with the show's creator, Michael Schur, and it gave you a little bit of background that I had heard a lot of it before, but you know, it's still always kind of interesting to hear that kind of stuff. Like, I enjoyed him. He talked about, in this episode, casting and how the casting director he worked with was so amazing, and how he could say, like, I need someone who is, you know, Filipino and good looking and can play a silent monk and also kind of a dumb guy. And she can find these people, you know, he can give these very specific descriptions of characters and assume that there is no one out there that would fit. And then she goes ahead and finds them. So anyway, that was a fun little tidbit. And
the transition from Jianyu to Jason Mendoza is a particularly amazing one, that somebody could play both those parts.
Right. So that was a fun little inside look, and I look forward to more episodes of that podcast to find out what else they are going to share with us.
Definitely. Let's see how they're going to manage this, although they could stop making jokes about podcasts being something that just anybody can do, because it takes seasoned professionals such as ourselves to put together a podcast. It's not the kind of thing you could just do on Skype with people dropping in and out or anything. It's highly technical, you Good Place guys.
Right.
And now for our final segment today, we're going to do a little shameless self-promotion and direct you to some of the things on our sites that we think you should take a look at. Now, I am happy to announce that our podcast finally has a website.
Yay!
Yay! So I'm going to direct people over to that, because that's something that I just finished working on over the weekend. It still needs a little fine tuning, but go and check it out, and you'll be able to link to all of our past podcasts. And there's a little, page about us, and it's a work in progress still, but it's definitely, the framework is there. So
yeah, a little more expansive than our tiny Libsyn site.
I hope so. I think so. I think, it definitely is a place to go, and you can, have a look around.
Yeah. And what is the URL for that as of right now?
parentingroundaboutpodcast.com.
All right. And for the moment, our Libsyn page will still be at parentingroundabout.com, but at some point we'll redirect that over.
Yes. So, Catherine, what is your shameless self-promotion this week? What do you have to share?
I do have a highlights piece, and it is called Let's Be Friends. And it is about some of the benefits that preschoolers get out of friendships. And that is pretty recent over at highlights.com.
All right.
Terri, what about you?
So you may have noticed that last week we delivered you a nice rerun week of episodes from our archives, and hand chosen for your listening enjoyment by Catherine. And we are going to be continue doing that as vacation times are going on, with ones chosen for you by me and ones chosen for you by Nicole. And while we have all been digging around trying to find ones that we particularly remember fondly to share with you, it has reminded me that, you know what, every last episode of this podcast is right now on our Libsyn page. And also, Nicole, are they all on the new website, or just the most recent ones?
Well, there's a link to the Libsyn page.
All right. So if you go to our Libsyn page, which is still at parentingroundabout.com, you can mine years and years and years of us blathering about parenting. From way, way back when it was just about.com guides doing it, to the glorious day when we added Nicole to our lineup, to the years with Amanda, through the more recent times with just the three of us. There's a ton of podcast episodes on there, y'all. And you're going to have a day when you're just going to feel like laying on the couch and doing nothing, or sitting out in the sunshine and doing nothing, or you're driving your kid to camp, and you're going to say, how am I ever going to fill these hours and hours of idle time? We got all the podcast episodes you will ever need. And they're good. And you can enjoy how our sound has gotten better and better as the time has gone on. Go back and listen to some of those blog talk radio episodes from the early days. And then as we've gone along, and we've actually bought podcast mics and all this stuff. So we have been digging around in the archives, and we will be serving you up more things from them over the next few weeks. And we hope that you will just do some of your own. And you know what? If you find an episode that you particularly thought was worth sharing with other people, let us know, and we'll include that in our rerun somewhere along the line, or in our twittering. So check out the archives. Well, that's it for this week's episode of Parenting Roundabout. We hope you enjoyed it and that you'll join us every week. You can listen to podcast episodes on Radio Public or download them from Apple Podcasts. Please subscribe so that you get all of our podcasts and mini podcasts.
You can also follow us on Twitter, where I am at Nicole Erdix, Catherine is at CHaleco, and Terry is at Momitude. You can also follow the podcast on Twitter at Roundabout Chat, and look for us on Facebook, Pinterest, Tumblr, YouTube, and Instagram too.
Best of all, stop by our podcast page at parentingroundabout.com and read recaps, find links on everything we've mentioned, and talk back in the comments. Thanks to John Morin at johnjmorin.com for providing our in and out music. And I wish everyone a great week.